Yes, it's that time again. Hello everybody, it's me, GhostCritic, and yes, it's the annual Boxing Up video. For those of you who have never seen one of these videos before, you've not looked back on my playlists, what I do at the end of every year is all the comic books that I've collected over in 2016, the new ones that come out every week. I go through and tell you a little bit about them, if I'm still picking them up, how I enjoyed them or did not enjoy them, and put them in a box. This year I have two of them because I don't think one is going to suffice this year. For those of you who are interested in how I store my comic books, what I'll basically do, just for the ease of this video, is yes, I put them in these boxes that I've just shown you, and then once the camera's turned off, they all go in alphabetical order in all the long boxes that are currently residing behind my settee. It's literally alphabetical order. If I had a bigger house where I had a room that I could make into like a comic book den, I would no doubt have huge walls of just shelves and have them all out there. I'd put them in publishing house order and then do it alphabetically, but just for ease for me and because of the room and the constraints I have in my flat, is that they just basically go in any order as long as it's alphabetical. And that's it. So just in case you were wondering how I store my comic books. Right, let's get on with it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the smaller publishing houses, what I collected from then. I'm then going to go on to Marvel, then to DC, and finish off in style, because they've had the best books in 2016, with Image. So we're going to kick off with Aftershock. Aftershock, I got a couple of titles from, no, I think I only got the one from Aftershock, and that was after a recommendation from JLS Comics. He said that I should really pick this up, and right at the very beginning he was right. It was a great book. I enjoyed the creepiness of it. It felt very claustrophobic. It had this Children of the Damned kind of feel. Each of the covers has a great Francesca Francavilla artwork on it, and it started off really strong, really good, but then it kind of got very expositional. There was a lot of talking, not a great deal of action, but I'm still kind of digging the creepiness of it all, and why it's still there on my pull list. From Boom Studios, we got the last two issues of the 4-issue mini of Strange Fruit by J.G. Jones and Mark Waid. Great art, always is when you have J.G. Jones on your title. Mark Waid, I think, kind of struggled with this book, had a little bit of controversy in the middle of it, whether that was true controversy or just to hype the book and get people buying it, but I didn't see anything wrong with it particularly. It was a depiction of a certain time in history, and it was an awful time. You can't sugarcoat that kind of thing, but I'm not going to get into the politics of that. So yes, it kind of fizzled out at the end. I think it needed probably a couple more issues to flesh the story out, but it's done and it looked pretty. The other Boom Studio book, which kind of is holding on for dear breath, for dear life I should say, is The Woods. We're up to issue 27 of this, and as I've said many times, this book kind of constantly, it's a roller coaster ride with it. It literally builds up the action. You get this big payoff, sort of, and then it just crashes back down again. It just doesn't keep that momentum up. But I believe it's not got long to go. I'm being a bit stubborn with this probably. And I just want to see how this ends, so it is still on my pull list. Very naughty of me, I guess, but it's there. Right, So we're moving on to Dark Horse now. It's interesting because Dark Horse is a publishing house that I didn't really collect stuff from because it was very much more about TV and movie franchises, which isn't that bad a thing, but after I kind of got disenchanted with what they were doing with Buffy, because that was pretty much the last Dark Horse title I picked up regularly, I just kind of gave Dark Horse a wide berth, and their books, let's be honest, they're quite expensive. So when I saw that House of Penance, Peter J. Tomasi, Ian Bertram and Dave Stewart were bringing out this book, I just had to jump on it. 6-issue miniseries, the best miniseries that came out in 2016 in my opinion. Just a great horror genre kind of book regarding a real life house, but Tomasi and Bertram and Stewart both, all of them, put their kind of freaky twisted spin on it. Very bloody, very gory in places, but I enjoyed the hell out of this. I'm sure that will be coming out in a trade very, very soon, so if you did miss out on it, pick it up, you will not be disappointed. The next from Dark Horse was the new Matt Kint, Department H, the kind of locked room murder mystery tale. Again, this is one of those books that I'm glad I started picking up in singles. I would have loved to have been picking up Mind Management when that was coming out every month. Instead, I read that in trades, but it was a marvellous book, so I thought, right, he's got a new one now. I am picking this up in singles. I'm here at ground zero, ground level, and I'm gonna really enjoy this, and I do. It's an absolutely fantastic book that I, again, recommended very highly. Final set of Dark Horse came in the guise of Conan the Slayer, Cullen Bunn and Sergio Davila on art. Just, it's Conan the Slayer, you know what you're gonna get, and it's good. It's a great kind of high fantasy, supernatural wizards and ghosts and huge giants and hacking and slashing, and it's just good. It's good. You know what you're getting and you will not be disappointed. And it's another of those titles that I'm glad I'm picking up every month instead of searching them out in back issue bins. Okay, I'm getting them a great deal cheaper, but sometimes you just want that fresh book coming out every month. Right, so that is, I think, all the smaller publishing companies, so not a great deal, but it was growing. Now, on to Marvel. Now, Marvel took a turn for me in 2016 because my pull list at the beginning of the year to what it is now was immensely different. I was buying a lot of DC books and virtually no Marvel. I got very disenchanted with the publishing company and I said, look, no, that's it. You're out of my way. See you later. Get better and I might come back. And then Secret Wars came out and I really enjoyed it. It was a great kind of big blockbuster type Marvel event that they do far too often, but sometimes they get it, almost right, and they did get it almost right with Secret Wars. And of course, after that, they started bringing out all their new number ones. So I thought, right, this is the moment. Marvel, you're going to kind of bring me back into the fold, because I was always a Marvel fanboy. So, it was sad that I kind of gave up all my Marvel books back at the early 2016. And some of the titles worked for me, some of them didn't. We're kicking off with some earlier ones that came out. International Iron Man, I didn't last very long with this, 3 issues of it. I really thought this would have been a no-brainer for me because it was Brian Michael Bendis teaming back up with Alex Maleev. They did such a great job on Daredevil and I just enjoyed the hell out of those books that I thought, right, I'm going to really, really get this. I'm really going to enjoy it. But unfortunately, I think I backed the wrong Iron Man horse, so to speak, because this was not new reader friendly in the slightest, and after 3 issues I kind of gave up on it. Probably if I'd have picked Invincible Iron Man, which had that more comic booky feel, it could have lasted and been actually put on my pull list, but however it didn't. From their Icon imprint over at Marvel, we had Powers. 2 issues of Powers came out in 2016, which is a shame. But as kind of Tim Howlermouse said in one of my comment section a few months ago probably, was that Powers is a much better read when you kind of read it in trade, or you read a whole batch of the issues in one go. It flows better. I mean, obviously with 2 issues in a whole year, it's going to be difficult to pick up the story, to get that momentum, which is a shame, because Powers is a great concept. It's an interesting book, and I've loved picking up the later volumes in, again, back issue bins and the like. So let's get on to Marvel. It's a shame about this one, because it was just picking up. We got to a point where I was very interested in the universe, and that was Weird World. Weird World was a spin-off out of Secret Wars and all the tie-ins that they had, and instead of having this kind of big kind of barbarian type character that we'd seen in the Secret Wars spin-off, we had a young girl who was strangely transported into Weird World after trying to travel home with her mother's remains, and there was a lot of emotion behind in this book, and it kind of got to issue 6 where, you know, it felt like, right, we've got to this point, now we can really move on. But clearly not a lot of you were buying Weird World, which was a shame, because it had amazing Mike Del Mundo artwork on there. Should have lasted that much longer. I was incredibly happy to see Doctor Strange get his ongoing series. Whether this was down to the movie that's now been out for a while, I've not seen it. I'm not really up on watching all the Marvel movies or the DC ones, but I will do eventually. But Jason Aaron, Chris Picciello, just amazing stuff. I've loved this series. I love the way that Aaron has kind of brought his kind of power levels down after the story with the empirical ridding each kind of dimension of magic, leaving Doctor Strange, Stephen Strange, to find more inventive ways of beating his bad guys. But firm favourite, it's my favourite Marvel book at the moment. Moving on to another firm favourite, and he just won't give up trying to keep on and ongoing. It's Moon Knight. We had Jeff Lemire with a torrent of artists throughout this, not least on the original run with Smallwood and Belair on colours. Francesca Francavilla came on, Torres, Stokey. Just a great look at Moon Knight's kind of split personality, dysfunctional life, which is coming to a head now. It'll be interesting to see, 1, if the book continues, and 2, what Jeff Lemire will then do afterwards. Moving on to another creator team up that we had to say goodbye to on Daredevil, but they brought their magic to Black Widow. It's a spy thriller. That's what this book is. It's kind of very James Bond-esque, but we have Black Widow, who no one seems to like in the Marvel Universe. She always kind of gets into predicaments that don't bring her out looking that great. but she still perseveres, she still tries to do what is right, and I applaud her for that, and long may Mark Waid and Chris Samney continue with this book, giving it the life that they gave Daredevil when they came on for those 2 volumes. Right, moving on to the Inhumans, the Uncanny Inhumans. This was, I just thought, Inhumans, they're trying to make a big thing out of them because, yes, it's the whole kind of movie, is it going to happen, is it not going to happen? You've got them, not that I've seen it, but they're kind of making a big show of them in Marvel's Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. But I like the Inhumans. I like their attachments to the Fantastic Four. Unfortunately, they're not there in the Marvel Universe at the moment, so you've got to get it some Inhuman action just on their own. Again, it's been a series it's one of those books that kind of gets drawn into whatever event is going around at the time, rather than just being in and of itself. And it doesn't seem to have any signs of stopping right now, with obviously the Inhumans versus the X-Men going on, which I kind of ignored. Let me just push that aside, there we go. I'm surprised that I'm still picking this book up, but I'm still enjoying the hell out of it. It is Star Wars. We've got Jason Aaron again doing a great job on this movie franchise, stories that take place between A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back. And what it is it's incredibly, not new reader friendly, but you just don't need to know a great deal about Star Wars. You know, you don't have to be that ultimate Star Wars nerd in reading this. It is just kind of like this big kind of space opera that is the movie franchise in comic book form, and you can just sit there and enjoy a great adventure story that takes place in space. It's got characters that you are familiar with in some respect. I mean, I don't think there'll be many people who are watching my comic book channel who haven't seen at least one Star Wars film. There were obviously titles that I tried with Marvel that were just like, I'm sorry, but you're going to have to go. And one of them was Squadron Supreme. Had high hopes for Squadron Supreme. I'd heard a lot of things about older incarnations of them that sounded interesting to me. In this version of the Squadron Supreme, we had all these characters that we were familiar with, but had come from alternate Marvel universes that had seen their worlds die just before Secret Wars happened, and they were kind of like, I guess you could equate them to kind of like X-Force, when X-Force were badass, and they were doing all the things that, you know, the regular gaudy costume characters wouldn't do. They would do whatever needed to be done, and in kind of like the first issue you had them, you know, cutting off Namor's head. You wouldn't have necessarily seen that in a regular Marvel book. So it started off well, but eventually I grew tired of it. It was directionless. What it's doing now, I've no idea. I'm not really interested. Another book that took its toll, and again, it's another of those titles that got tied in with too many of the events that were going around, was Uncanny Avengers. I think with a lot of the books of the main kind of franchises at Marvel, like, you know, like X-Men, like the Avengers, what else? I think of other books, but what I said right at the very beginning when Marvel were bringing out all these, I was going to try one of each of like the big books, because Avengers, I used to collect quite a lot of them, and then I got very kind of, again, disenchanted with Marvel because they kept resetting everything, starting at number 1 again, and I was like, no, I'm not going to do this again. So it was interesting to go back into the Avengers universe, and I always seem to pick what I think are the lower tier Marvel books of these big team, big name books. And sometimes it works for me, sometimes it doesn't. With Uncanny Avengers, it just didn't work. And after issue 14, I said bye-bye. Very strange kind of team they had anyway, mixing of Avengers and X-Men, and of course the ubiquitous Deadpool. Another books that I kept on because I kind of have a lot of love for this group of superheroes, though they're not exactly classed as superheroes at the moment, and that's X-Men and Extraordinary X-Men. The big pull for me on this was the art. It was Ramos on artwork, and I just really enjoyed his artwork. We had Lemire doing okay work on this. He was bringing more of the younger, the newer X-Men, bringing them to the forefront. Another book that kind of got sucked into events that it really shouldn't and needn't have been part of. There was that weird Age of Apocalypse Wars one that I was completely lost on because I wasn't picking up any other of those books, but I've held strong with this, and hopefully, you know, it'll get better with time. You have your ups and downs with your books. Moving on to Daredevil. Daredevil rebranded, rebooted, this time with Charles Soule and initially Ron Garney doing artwork. This was back to Daredevil being all gritty and dark. He had a new costume. He had a sidekick with blind spot, though we wonder how much longer we're going to get that. But it's a good book. I'm enjoying Daredevil. It's what you expect from a Daredevil book, in that it's kind of action-packed, it's got lots of adventure, it's got very kind of strange villains for Daredevil to go up against. He doesn't really go up against like the high-tier villains. We've yet to see the likes of Kingpin show his face yet. Hopefully, you know, Charles Soule may bring him in later on in 2017. I thought I'd give Silver Surfer. Dan Slott continuing another volume of the book. With Silver Surfer, it's like, especially because it's got the Old Reds, who have a very distinct style, that kind of kooky, off-kilter, retro style. It was hard to take the book seriously. There are some elements that seem to be bringing into the storyline now that may kind of bring on bigger things, though I did say to Dan Slott over the Christmas period, when I'd seen the last page of the latest issue, that I wondered how long this book was going to last, because it feels like what he's doing is bringing the book to an end. He didn't confirm or deny it, he just did a maniacal laugh. Are we up to the last? Oh, two more from them. I'll just move these around a bit. Punisher, one of my favourite Marvel characters, being written by a woman for a change. Again, third call out for this. I've already said I don't believe Punisher has ever been written by a woman before, so again I was very excited about this, but it was nothing new. It was good. It was Punisher. It's what we expect him to do, but it was just doing nothing new. And I'm hoping it's just Becky Cloonan finding her feet with the character, and hopefully from now on something great, something exciting will come of it all. But at the moment, it's just kind of coasting along. Finally, for 2016, we saw the, for Marvel anyway, of what I collected, we saw the last 2 parts of Secret Wars, which I have to say was actually an almost perfect Marvel event for a change. I've not been able to say that for a long time, and not just because I've not been getting them, but Secret Wars was one of those books that I just had to pick up, given, you know, its history and how encompassing it was all going to be. You may notice that I've not put any of the Secret Wars tie-ins that I collected into this video, because basically I've put them in a separate box because there are so many of them, and I decided towards the end of the Secret Wars run that, despite the fact that I didn't pick them all of the tie-ins at the time up, I decided that I'm going to try and find them all and complete the whole series. So I've got every tie-in, every one-shot, and obviously I've got the main series there. Right, we're moving on to DC now, and like I said at the beginning of the Marvel segment, we had a bit of a switch around. After collecting a great deal of DC books within the kind of New 52 regime, once that all had stopped and they decided, oh, we're going to start everything at #1 again, I had that kind of Marvel feeling, was like, oh, get lost, don't play this game with me anymore. And I decided to cut everything, well, pretty much everything, and decided to pick up only 2 of the kind of main DC titles that I hadn't tried before, and you'll see them come up. But we're going right to the beginning of 2016, and I can't believe this was so long ago and these are still on my shelf. But do you remember the great Gotham by Midnight, written by Fawkes with artwork by Ferreira? This was such a good book, kind of set in the Batman universe, because obviously it was in Gotham, but it's focused on this kind of supernatural, occult detective agency with the Spectre. Oh God, I've forgotten his host body. Oh, remind me in the comments section, I can't remember. But it was just a great book, and after 12 issues, clearly no one was picking it up, or not enough people, so DC, it's all about the numbers with them. They cancelled it, stopped it. Oh well. There was obviously the end of the Batman 52 run from Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo. How could I forget? They finished off their last run. They got to do issue 50, and you can't say anything really bad about it, because it was a great run. Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo constructed a great series for the New 52, and just opened up so many more avenues of the kind of Bat history, whether it's continued on in the new universe that we have now, I don't know, because I'm not picking up any more Batman titles. So that would obviously include Batman Detective Comics. This was basically my stubbornness, because I had such a problem with this book. So many ups and downs, but more downs than ups with this book. But like I said, stubbornness stopped me from dropping it, and I just got through the whole 52 run of them. That's just me. Moving on to a Vertigo title, which I was just, oh, it's been so good, it's been so creepy, it's been so chilling. It's Gail Simone's Clean Room, a fantastic Vertigo title with just a great creepy kind of demons, good versus evil, though those lines are kind of blurred very often throughout this series. And just every issue kind of like shocks you and just takes you for a fool, trusting in people at points when you really shouldn't have been. Damn you, Gail Simone. But thank you for following me on Twitter, by the way. Moving on to a series that just keeps going on, and I can't believe it, but I'm glad it is. It's Kurt Busiek's Astro City. We've not seen any issues for a while, but that's okay. Give Kurt a little break. But 40 issues of Astro City. No other volume of Astro City, whatever publishing house it was at, has lasted this long. These have been great stories, whether, you know, they were the maybe overly long kind of 4 or 6 issue storylines, or whether they're the done-in ones. They're still a class act from Kurt Busiek, with a variety of artists on the book, but they kind of managed to keep in the style of what we know to be kind of Astro City and the universe it kind of inhabits. So I've appreciated them not taking it too far out into an artist style that, you know, is perfectly good, but maybe not perfect for the Astro City universe. We lost Darwin Cook this year, which was just such a shock, and I'm going to talk about this more in a separate video, but we saw the last 2 issues of the Twilight Children, probably the last published work of Darwin Cook that we saw while he was alive. I'm sure there is some books, whether they were in the works or whether they were finished and just not ready to be published yet, but I'm sure we will see some more new Darwin Cook art and work, but it won't be for much longer. I can't imagine him having that much stuff still in like his back pocket that DC or whatever publishing house can bring out. But the Twilight Children was a lovely mini-series published on the Vertigo line. It had this kind of creepy, supernaturally, almost alien type feel to it, set in this quiet coastal village, and just with the inimitable kind of Darwin Cook art style that I just love. Moving on to Miller and Azzarello's Dark Knight 3, The Master Race. I'm sure we all picked this up because it was like, well, it's the next series in what is arguably one of the kind of greatest graphic novels, comic book series of all time. And with each kind of incarnation afterwards, it seems to have lost its way. I have no idea what kind of Miller and Azzarello were trying to do in this book. Strange enough, at the time of me videoing this, the next issue is out, and I don't know whether I'm going to pick it up because it's not actually on my pull list. My comic book gets so many of these that I can just pick it up off the shelf, but I really don't know. And that's weird for me because with only 2 issues to go, and me being the kind of completist that I am, I'm surprised I'm not just getting it just to complete it. Right, so we're on to the first of the Rebirth titles that I picked up, and that was The Flash, written by Joshua Williamson, with obviously alternating artists, because this book was coming out every other week. As I've continually said throughout Flash, and indeed the other title, I've never picked them up in solo books before, so I thought, let's have a go at it. I like the character Flash. I just have never bothered to kind of pick it up in kind of singles. But this has been a great read. It's quite new reader friendly. You know, you can do some digging, you can do some research. You don't have to just take what you're given in these books. You know, Google is your friend. It can also be your enemy. It can give you far too much information. But just go out of the book, research it, and you pick up bits, which is what I did. Who is this character? Why is it so important? Google it. Simple. The age of the internet. And of course, that other book that I picked up was Wonder Woman. They had kind of 2 stories running alongside each other every other week. We had a kind of a year 1 tale and a kind of present day tale, which addressed the story. You know, Greg Rucka was addressing the origin story and of who is actually the real Wonder Woman, so to speak. Where did she actually come from? And it's been a really interesting read, especially for me, not having read Wonder Woman in singles before, and it's just been a great Wonder Woman story. I'll be interested to see what Rucka does once these 2 storylines are done and dusted, and moving Wonder Woman along and in a kind of present day guise, putting to rest, so to speak, all of these ideas about her origins, etc, etc. Right, are we... No, we're still going. Another title that more of you really should have been picking up to keep it going, despite the fact that they brought out a kind of mini-series with his partner, and I mean that more in partner in crime as well as partner in kind of real life, his lover. It's a Midnighter. He had this solo series that kind of... I didn't really came out of Rebirth because it never got the Rebirth title, but this was such a good book. We had Steve Orlando doing some fantastic work, and with Aiko on the art, this was just a treat, not only for the storyline, but for also the gorgeous panelling and art and the kinetic energy this book had. And it was great to have a series with a gay character that it just didn't feel like he was a gay character. You know, you knew he was gay. He had relationships with men. You saw him in bed with other men. But it wasn't the main focus. It wasn't like, oh, here they trot out another gay, a lesbian, a transgender character. And they just didn't feel like there was... I hate using the word, but there was no controversy about this title like all the rest when suddenly a character was made gay or a transgender or anything like that. This kind of snuck under the radar, but it shouldn't have. It should have been at the forefront because this was how a gay character should have been written. Badass, doing what they want, and it was just kind of a normal day. And that's all I've really got to say about Midnighter, but for those of you who didn't pick that up, shame on you! Another of my stubborn purchases, but it only lasted 18 issues, despite the fact I thought it was never going to end, was Dr. Fate. Paul Levitt's trying his damned hardest to make Dr. Fate relevant again. I love DC's kind of magical occult characters, but they are just so misused so often. And very much so with Dr. Fate. Paul Levitt spent too much time kind of bringing our new Dr. Fate up to speed, making him accustomed to his powers. Even right at the very end, you kind of felt like he has got no clue who he is or what he needs to do as he puts on kind of like the helmet. Oh. But it ended. It was done. Goodbye, Dr. Fate, though I think he's in another of the books as... if not just like a cameo of some sort. Another great mini-series that came out in 2016 was Len Wein and Kelly Jones' Swamp Thing. We had a 6-issue run from them. Very, very old school Swamp Thing, which was fantastic. Kelly Jones' art, not the greatest I've seen. I know a lot of people enjoyed it. I've seen better, but it still didn't... It still wasn't bad by any stretch of the imagination. And just a nice little kind of EC horror type of tale, throwing in the Phantom Stranger and Satana, and if I remember rightly, even John Constantine. Those two seem kind of like intrinsically linked. Okay, so that's all my DC. We finally get to my Image books. Deep breath, here we go. Right, let's start with, we'll start up here and just get rid of this shelf. Morning Glories. 2 issues, Nick Spencer. 2 issues in 2016. Okay, issue 50 was kind of double length, but it's worse than Lost. It's just left us hanging, and I have no clue. And because it's not been out for so long, I've even forgotten what happened in issue 50, how it ended. I don't know whether the two have kind of given up on this now and just don't know what to do with it, but it's such a shame because Morning Glories was a great book, full of twists and turns. You know, it's as frustrating as the TV show Lost was, but still a great book, but just didn't come out enough. Let's move on to another book that didn't come out very often in 2016. It's Trees. Warren Ellis and Jason Howard. Again, I feel this is another case of I don't think Warren Ellis knows what to do with this book anymore. And maybe he's just getting his head down and trying to figure out what he wants to do with this now and give it some sort of ending. Because at the moment, it's very disparate. And obviously, again, keeping up with the storyline, what has been happening when you have so many big breaks between just 2 issues, it's hard to keep the momentum going. Moving on to one of my favourite sci-fi books of Image. Image love their sci-fi at the moment, and that is Jeff Lemire and Dustin Nguyen's Descender. I've championed especially the artwork on this. It's very different than anything you're really going to see on the shelves right now. That kind of the pages look as if they've been painted on like an artist's canvas. It is all painted work. Whether that's digital or real, I don't know, but I honestly don't mind, because this book, Jeff Lemire has been very clever with the storyline over this year. He's given focus to and spotlighted a lot of the characters that reside in the Descender universe, but not to the detriment of pushing the story forward. So, very, very, very good book. If you like your sci-fi but you want it a little bit different in look and feel, then I certainly recommend Descender. The spy thriller post-apocalyptic world that is Lazarus, full of clones, political subterfuge, dirty deals, backstabbing, families controlling the world, just a few of them, and they're all battling each other for supremacy and power and rulership. Just a great book, and you know, there have been talks about this being a TV show, and it is one of those books that will definitely make a great TV show. So great stuff by Aruka and Lark there. Moving on to another of Image's fancy schmancy sci-fi books. It's Rick Remender's Black Science with the unbelievably talented Matteo Scalera and Marino Designo on art, taking over from I think it was Dean White. And this book just been a joy to read. Never, for me anyway, disappointed. Took us to many different worlds, so it could play around with not just the sci-fi genre, but kind of like high fantasy as well. But a great book that, at its root, like a lot of Image books from, you know, these big name writers, it was a lot to do with family. But great stuff. East of West, Jonathan Hickman continuing to build and enrich this wonderful universe he's created. Again, some great creative artists on this, with Dragotta and Martin on colours. another of those books where it's kind of like you don't know what's going to happen in the next issue, what twists and turns, what kind of backstabbers are going to come out of the woodwork, but certainly crescendoing into an all-out war coming very soon. But again, at the side of it, which really has, it started off very much prominent at the forefront, but it's kind of taken a back seat, but just been there on the periphery, is again a story about family. It's a father going out looking for his son. The father just happens to be one of the old guard of the kind of 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, namely death. Moving on to a book that I don't know whether this is coming back out or not. It's They're Not Like Us. Written by Eric Stevenson, art by Simon Gain, colours Geordie Belair. Does she ever stop? But 3 issues of this kind of X-Men Outsiders kind of, but in an independent publishing house where they are the outcasts, on the run continually, who's pulling whose strings. But again, it's kind of been left up in the air whether this book has either just kind of been like, okay, we're not selling enough to bring this out anymore. It would be nice for Eric to, if this is the case, to bring out maybe 1 double-sized issue, just to kind of tie everything up and complete a series. Yes, I have a problem. Moving on to Autumn Lands, another Kurt Busiek. This time he's doing anthropomorphic tale of magic. Some, again, Geordie Belair. She's just an amazing colourist who just brings everyone's work to life. But fantastic covers on these, bringing in some huge kind of genres and themes in this book. We've not seen one for a while, but I think, again, time of this going out, me recording it, sorry, the next issue is about to come out, so I may have to catch up and read this last issue just to remember where we were. A great kind of steampunkish fantasy from Marjorie Liu and Sana Takeda was Monstrous. We saw 7 issues of it over this month. She took a break and came back with a new story arc, but just high fantasy, gorgeously drawn by Sana Takeda, and I think she's doing the colours as well. And it's just so detailed, so you look at a page and there's a lot to look at. It's so finely detailed that I can't get enough of this, and it needs to come out more. Moving on to a book that's dropped. We saw the end of Dark Corridor by Rich Tommaso. This ended up being a 7-issue series, which is a shame. I don't know whether it was meant to just finish off this way. It had that kind of very underground artist feel to it, but it was a great book. I really enjoyed the kind of interconnecting stories. It was kind of a bit like, what Pulp Fiction and the likes of Kill Bill did, intermingling stories where they all kind of meet up as a head and they're all kind of interconnected in some way. Almost finished this shelf. Matt Fraction and Christian Ward's Odyssey. 4 issues came out in 2016, and I don't blame them because Christian Ward pours so much love, so much passion, and so much imaginative creativeness into these pages that I can't blame them for not bringing this out as often as I would like it. Yes, the story is a little bit difficult to follow. You kind of really need to concentrate on this book, but when it comes to the art, you just soak it in. One of those books that you wish every page was like a poster and you could adorn your walls with this gorgeous art. Interesting book, not for everyone. That's all I can really say about that. We had the last issue of Eric Brubaker and Sean Phillips' The Fade Out come out at the beginning of 2016. We didn't really have to wait very long for a new series, which we'll obviously get back to in a minute when I get to that particular series. But another great run from a super team. A big shout out to Elizabeth Brightweiser, who was also the colourist on this. She's doing some fantastic work at the moment. Lastly, for this shelf, it's another Remender book. He had lots of books out in 2016. It's Low. Again, one of those series. I don't think it's that he doesn't take this title as seriously as his others. It's just, I think, again, it's more probably to do with the art. Ticini just brings this world, whether it's underwater or where we finally got to above water on land. He puts so much gorgeous detail and thought into the concepts, the way people look, the way people dress, that it must just take him forever to just do one issue. But again, it's one of those books where the passion, the love for what they are producing shines through. So again, I can't really complain that this book didn't come up on my pull list as often as I would have liked to. Right, next level. Right, we have got a couple of, let's do the couple of the odd ones that really didn't continue picking up, but it was She-Wolf from Tomasi. If you want to go back and watch what I thought about that, that's on my comic book Christmas countdown, as is Jupiter's Legacy Volume 2 from Mark Millar and Frank Quietly. Again, you can hear what I said all about that in that countdown. Moving on, Mark Millar and Greg Capullo came out with Reborn. There has actually been 3 issues of this, but the 3rd issue is in another box at the moment. But interesting tale that I hear isn't going to last as long as I thought it would. I thought this would be an ongoing at least, but 6 issues of that I believe is only coming out. Remender doesn't leave us wanting for his titles for very long. We got a new one from him, 7 to Eternity. Again, another of those kind of high fantasy books. This time in a world that's kind of like, it doesn't have any science or technology in it. It is, it's purely magic, which is kind of the flip side of his other book that came out and finished just after this, which was Tokyo Ghost, which you're obviously going to see very, very soon. The Headlopper. Headlopper was a fun book. What did I call it? Yes, Adventure Time meets Conan. It definitely had that kind of very cartoony feel, but with kind of barbarians and again that kind of supernatural vibe to it. The kind of wizards and warlocks and ghosts and trolls and heads of witches that can talk. But this came out, it was a quarterly, what they call a quarterly adventure comic from Image, and loved it. Shame it only lasted 4 issues, but had a hilarious time with that. That's now actually out in one of those kind of oversized books, so go find that and just have a lot of fun with that. Just mentioned this, but Tokyo Ghost came to an end in 2016 of its 10-issue run. I think it's kind of been left open that he may come back to it. He has mentioned this. Whether he will or not is another question. But this was, I mean, like I said, it's so different to 7 to Eternity, because this was again another of those kind of post-apocalyptic universes where everything practically in this planet's universe is technology based. He was, I guess, Remender was doing his kind of almost satire on, you know, kind of social media and the pervasiveness of it, and it did kind of labour the point sometimes, but artwork by Hollingsworth on that. and Murphy, Sean Murphy, was just fantastic. Again, one of those books that's got so much detail into it that you just can look at a page for, you know, a good 5-10 minutes and still not see everything. The saga that is Saga. What can you really say about Saga? It's just kept the quality going. There have been moments, you know, where I've kind of like, it's another issue of Saga. What do you say about it? You know, you just don't want to have to always kind of praise books, and then you start getting a little bit nitpicky about things. And I just never meant to with Saga, because it's a book that was just, you know, from the very get-go, I did like a review of the very first issue and was just blown away by it, and it kept going like that for so long. I guess momentum of that kind of level is gonna kind of decrease over time, but then still have those kind of big highlights and shocking moments. But it's Saga. It's a good book. It should be on your comic book pull list. Okay, sorry about that, another little break because my camera only films in half an hour batches for whatever reason, I don't know, deal with it. So, where was I? I just done Saga. Let's go on to a great new series by Jonathan Hickman. I gave it my #1 slot on my comic book Christmas countdown because it was that good. Black Monday Murders. What an intense read this was. Not just in kind of like the volume of pages in this book, not just because of the immense amount of back matter reading within this book, but the story. God, it's so dark, it's so twisted. Oh, but it's good. Oh, but it's good. I watch my video, #1, comic book Christmas countdown. You'll hear me talk about it more. As you would have with the next one, Ed Brubaker, Sean Phillips and Elizabeth Brightvice's next noir-themed book. It is Kill or Be Killed, giving us a bit of kind of supernatural twist again, like kind of like Fatale but not, and giving us a little bit of kind of like vigilantism at the same time. As always with Ed Brubaker's books, it's very much about the characters, and also Sean Phillips' amazing technique in just drawing you into, no pun intended, these environments that these characters live in, and they feel so real, and just like you could step into the panel and be part of this world. It's so fully realised that I think a lot of people miss out on that when they read this book and kind of concentrate on what is going on with the story and what's going on with the characters and what Brubaker is doing with them. But again, they did it again. Moving on, we had the final issue of Grant Morrison's Nameless, that sci-fi horror, drug-fueled, crazy, gory, horrific title, which was so good, which was really good. I must make time to go back and reread this again, but it's Grant Morrison, it's going to be weird, it's going to deal with kind of like, I don't know, I don't want to say Greek or that kind of mythology, but you know, the Cthulhu and all that kind of stuff, basically. Brian K Vaughan continued his Paper Girls, which has been just a surprise hit for me anyway. Okay, yes, it's Brian K Vaughan. He's done some fantastic work in his time, but surely he's going to slip up at some point. And while I wasn't sure whether a story about 4 teenage girls who deliver papers was going to be my kind of thing, but it turned out to be something so much more. And again, it's one of those books that is more character driven. Yes, huge things are happening to these girls, but it's not so much about those huge events that happen, it's how they deal with it, how they react to it, and we get to actually feel like we know these girls, and it's just been a lovely story from a character basis. It's been crazy, kind of the overarching story, what the hell is going on type of thing, where, you know, we kicked off in the 80s, we're now in the present day, there's stuff from the future, there's crazy ass kind of monsters and people from the future. Oh, good stuff. So on to what is arguably my favourite comic book at the moment. It is, and obviously it's Rick Remender, it's Deadly Class. We kicked off 2016 with a kind of battle royale, end of year culling, so to speak, where all the freshmen had to fight for their lives, literally, and you kind of got to the end of this and it was shocking. They killed off a lot of the main characters that you just thought, well, we'll see them in the next year, they're going to survive. But of course, Rick Remender twisted the knife in, not just in the characters but in the readers themselves, and then he took a little bit of a hiatus to bring us the new Deadly Class, and we got a new set of freshmen, and whoever survived from the end of year kind of exam is what they called it. But it's just been a fun book. It kind of epitomises the 80s vibe that this book goes through. It's a lot to do with the characters, but more in a kind of like fucked up way. These are characters that I don't generally think you want to be friends with, because you never know when they're gonna literally stab you in the back. We're almost at the end now, in fact only 2 more books. David Lapham's Stray Bullets, Sunshine and Roses. For those of you who have watched my videos over the years, over this year, you'll have heard me say on many occasions, it's like, when is this book going to end? I think we all expected these to be kind of like short mini-series, like the last one was, which was is it called Killers? I think it was called Killers, and that only lasted about I think it was 6 or 8 issues, but this is up to issue 19 now, and it's so dark but funny at the same time. It is this kind of slice of life, crime life, but it's kind of taken to the extreme, but still in a, I want to say, in a very real way. But yes, incredibly dark, incredibly kind of like, it shoots off in kind of many directions, and you think that's just a kind of interlude story, but they all somehow interconnect in a very kind of Pulp Fiction, Reservoir Dogs type of way. But David Lapham is doing such a great job on this. I don't want this to end. It's been so good a read, and if you've never read a Stray Bullets before, give this series a go. Finally, I said goodbye to this series because I was just picking up too many books, and some things just had to go, and they did hike the price up a little bit midway through the year, and that was Justin Jordan's Spread, set in that kind of a post-apocalyptic winter world where we have this entity that eats any organic life in its way, and it just becomes bigger and bigger, and it is literally it's huge. It takes over people completely. Very bloody, very gutsy, kind of sci-fi horror, but I mean, if there were ever a book that I would call a guilty pleasure, it was this, but it just it just had to go. There was nothing wrong with it. It was just unfortunate that this was one of the books that generally got put to the bottom of my pile to read last, and I'd read all my favourite stuff first. I think that's it. If I've forgotten anything, I've forgotten anything, but that's it. I hope you all stuck around, or at least got to the end in little bits and spurts. But that is 2016. The shelves are empty. Let's fill it up with Silver Surfer to look after the shelf for 2017. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you for all the support over 2016. There'll be a lot more videos to come in 2017. Obviously, the Wednesday comic book pull list is going nowhere, so you'll be able to keep an eye on all my purchases throughout the year. Bye.